Hello and welcome. I'm Jocelyn Houle. I am a Senior Director of Product Management and the Global Director of our Tech Alliances at Security. And before this I was at Capital One as an operating partner for Capital One Ventures. And I'm super excited to report that we've got a lot of great new alliances forming every day for security. And I don't play favorites. However, if I did play favorites, it would probably be Databricks. I've worked with Databricks back since 2016. When I first started at Cap One, I came to lead the teams that were going to build all the data management software to move all in on the cloud. And the first people in my office were all these Databricks data scientists and engineers who had essentially snuck Databricks in the back door. And they were adamant. They're like, we're not going to give up. We're not going to give up our notebooks and our materialized views. We want to make sure you're not going to take away Databricks. Well, of course, we didn't take away Databricks at Capital One. We expanded it across 8 lines of business, and we were able to invest in them. And what I really got a front row seat there to see is what happens when you provide safe, well-managed data to Databricks engineers. They're really able to innovate. And that's what we're seeing every day with our security customers, who are some of the biggest financials, consumer packaged goods, airlines. They're letting their Databricks data scientists and data engineers innovate and move forward because they have trusted, sanitized data. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we get there from here to there and how we're working with Databricks specifically in our shared customers. But first, and some of you may be living this every day. Right now, a lot of organizations have identified AI projects that they want to do. They immediately get the support of the executive team and get funded, but they get jammed up. If you're a data person, you probably already knew this was going to happen. In fact, there was a report that just came out from JP Morgan just recently, I think in the last week, that said only 10% of funded AI projects are actually going forward. And you don't have to read every single item on the left-hand side here, but it's really coming down to data and controls. And that of course includes things like privacy and governance and compliance, all the things, and I can share more information with you on that. But we know in the cloud data world why these projects get gummed up. Let me talk a little bit about that. There are special challenges. When we even do this in the cloud data world, right? That we have special challenges when you're working with structured or unstructured data. We know that not everybody's just on one cloud. There's multiple clouds and on-prem, and some teams are more advanced than others. And we know that with cloud, we saw some new kinds of risks. So all of that was true, and we're trying to apply guardrails. It wasn't perfect, and along comes AI, right? And it just sort of throws fire on this problem and 10x's it, because suddenly we really do have to integrate all of that unstructured data right now. We were trying to keep it on simmer, and that's not available to us. The ingestion path now is much more high stakes, right? Because it's not just that we're going to have multiple cloud copies and we're going to have a hard time tracking it. It's that we're going to ingest data into a non-deterministic system that we cannot trace. It goes, when it goes, it's gone. And of course, last item is we have a brand new vector of risk in the form of prompts that offers risk both inbound and outbound. So for all of these reasons, it's a little different, right? And the guardrails approach isn't going to work. Let me talk a little bit in detail about why that's not going to work for building AI pipelines. So taking a look at the left-hand side here, if you're trying to, and a lot of customers really want to do this, especially our Databricks data scientists, they want to pull in unstructured and structured data sources into an AI pipeline, some of it even real time. As you may know, but it's also worth just pausing to think about, over 90% of corporate data is unstructured data. And not only is that unstructured data making up 90% of the corpus, often it's very difficult to find. People don't know where it is. It hasn't been adequately inventoried, or we've used sort of like raise your right hand and attest please that this data is here or not here. So in addition to being able to find it, and if you've ever dealt with this unstructured data problem, it is rife with sensitive data. It's packed in there. Think about every phone call to the customer call center that's been recorded in the last 5 years, full of account data, ID, social security numbers. Think of every driver's license that's been taken a photo of every time you go to the hospital. All of these things are sort of lying in wait, just risk that hasn't been realized in large-scale organizations. And the interesting thing is when you're working with it in an AI or RAG pipeline, once you move it, you're going to lose context. Context is something we all love as data scientists and engineers. We want as much as possible. But the key context from a data protection standpoint, and the concern that we see time and time again, is what about the access context? Who is really supposed to have access to this? And the reason that's concerning is that you do not want people having more access downstream in the output of this AI solution than they did upstream when you put the data into the pipeline. So the classic example I always like to give is, the president of HR, the VP of HR, probably has access to everyone's pay stubs and how they're compensated. You really don't want the HR intern who's doing a satisfaction survey to also be able to access that data. This actually gets more complicated, and we can talk about this more offline, because increasingly organizations have different types of users under different situations. You may be the same identity, but working in a different role across multiple lines of business. So along with that, we have the problem of prompts. And so this is just a brand new expanded vector of risk that, again, guardrails are going to be hard to implement after the fact. And we can talk more about it, but the prompt problem is both inbound and outbound. You may have heard of people using prompts to do data poisoning, injection attacks, but it's also outbound. You have people who are not necessarily bad actors, but are releasing proprietary information or confidential information out to customers. So when you look at this problem statement, what you come to realize is there's one big question. That question is, how do you select all the correct data at the left side here, programmatically sanitize it, and move it while keeping context, especially access? That's tricky. For our customers who are working on this right now, and our shared customers between Securiti and Databricks, this kind of takes two lines of thought. How can I safely pipe and sync all of this unstructured data in context? And then how can I kind of continuously and automatically assess and reduce the data risk early in the process on that kind of left-hand side of the chart? Let me tell you a little bit about how we do it at a high level and how that fits into the Databricks AI pipeline. One of the things I've always loved about this platform, and the reasons I joined the company, is that we've always treated unstructured and structured data, including Databricks data, as first-class citizens. It's very important to be able to pull both in, because it makes the outcome of your AI solution much better and makes you much more contextually aware in the result of the downstream solution. You can see here I've highlighted Databricks, but people, even the most dedicated Databricks shop, will want to have context coming from other unstructured sources. If you can find in an automatic way, find all that unstructured data, identify the sensitive data inside of it, then what we do is really special from there. We pull all of that into a data command graph. A lot's been said about graph. We can talk about it more, but in our case, it's really focused on a highly performant, fully realized graph that includes your access intelligence for who's provisioned to use this data right now. Once you have all of this platform available to you, then you're off to the races. You can build whatever you want inside of the AI mosaic kind of framework, or your own framework internally, so that all of the downstream organizations, all your lines of business, are able to then go ahead and build those AI pilots, those agents, those new complex systems, and who knows what other new innovative item is on the boards for them. Let me talk a little bit more specifically about Securiti and Databricks in this context as kind of a general view. Specifically, and of course, I'm a fan of Securiti, that's my job, but you guys should be thinking about this as buyers and builders across the board, right? When you're thinking about these problem statements, to safely sync unstructured data, you are going to need connectors that are reliable connectors updated across hundreds of systems if you're in a large, highly regulated organization. You're going to need to make sure that you can scan, detect, and classify with real accuracy and low false positive rates. And that's been our focus since the beginning of security. If you can do that, then you're really unlocking, particularly these Databricks engineers who are on the front lines of AI solution building, you can unlock them to streamline their process, deploy faster, and directly work in Delta tables with unstructured data. As far as assessing and reducing data risk, of course, we're big proponents of the graph, but specific to how that works with Databricks, if you have the contextual awareness that the graph provides, you're going to have, let me back up a little bit. So the graph, people talk about like automatically pulling metadata. I'm sure you've talked to other vendors who do that, but it's very important to think about what is that context. That context can just be your sort of basic technical and business metadata. But what we do, and I think that's really special, is we can also add all of the overlapping compliance and regulation. We have a dedicated team. This is all they do all day. We can add your internal audit. I come from the banking world where we also have, in addition to like 8 different regulators, we have our own internally designed pain machine that we make up for ourselves. And that also has to be adhered to. So all of these things will come together. And in the case of using security and Databricks together, you can then set policies around this context. You understand then like what the context of the data is, what the risk is, what your regulatory obligation is. And then you can actually write that to Unity. So you can create policies in security and pass it to Unity to enforce. So wrapping up a little bit, I wanted to take some time again to just walk through in detail. We talked a little bit specifically about how this works for our Databricks, our shared customers who really do want to unblock AI projects, and they're doing it. They're actually building it today. Let me back up a little bit and show you a little bit about how that fits into the overall security platform. All of our customers who we talk to, and these are the largest multinationals and international companies. My focus is finance, but we have a lot of work with the travel world as well as CPG. They're really worried about data exposure risk, and they're so worried about it that they're not able to kind of get to the innovation part of what they want to do. A lot of times they're getting funded, they get off to the races, and then they find they're not able to protect data correctly because they don't know where it is. They don't have the old manual processes of attesting to what that data risk is really aren't working because people don't know. The access risk, as I mentioned, is complex. Most people are over-provisioned today. In the AI pipeline, it's a non-deterministic system. So if you're over-provisioned, that's going to get baked in. And it has to get resolved early on the left-hand side of the narrative. We just talked about AI data use and risk, so I won't return to that. But in terms of privacy, compliance, and ROT, these again are elements that are of grave concern, but require 2 things. You have to have an automated programmatic notion of the risk combined with what are the compliance rules for you specifically, which are changing all the time. So these are the worries. Now, for our customers, and what we're able to provide are these items in the context of a graph across every unstructured and structured data system, including SaaS and on-prem. That is really constructing for our customers a true data estate that they can leverage easily with built-in security and visibility. Let me talk about each of these boxes, not in great detail, but again, something to think about if you're buying and building. The data AI asset discovery. This is actually getting more complicated every day because we have a complex hybrid environment that's changing all the time. So even automated scanners have to be highly intelligent. And we've spent a lot of time building really intelligent, nuanced pods and scanners that can understand what is new, what is a copy, what is nearly new or very similar to the last thing, or actually brand new data. These are important considerations, not only to make sure you're getting your data security picture correct, but also in the terms of the cost of processing. You do not want to be scanning all of your data every day. That's not going to work. Unintended data access, we talked a little bit about that. I do think it's really interesting, and I'd love to do a separate presentation on the advent of ABAC, which we have embraced really strongly in the system, because different data producers, you could be a data producer one day and a data consumer that afternoon, right? Depends on what your role is and what activities you're engaged in. The other thing about data access is machine level access. That's something to think about. In the finance world, we have limitations, right, on the data that we can use that came from a credit card application versus data that may have come through from a retail banking relationship. And so that's the kind of access that's a machine level that also needs to be guided in addition to individuals. We talked a little bit about the configuration posture when I was talking about some of the problems that people experience. Configuration posture is really, to me, the how much do I care question. I'm not a cyber person, so don't tell anyone I said that. But when you have an exposure, let's say you've got something that's more external facing on the internet than you anticipated. My first question is, well, is there any sensitive data there, right? That's how much do I care about this? Is this on the emergency list? It's very difficult for our customers to understand what to remediate in what order. And if any of you work in highly regulated organizations, you know that once you find it, you're on the clock to remediate or report. So what you have, so orange is all the concerns, blue are the things that we address, I think, in a really comprehensive, enterprise-focused way with great detail. And of course, pulling it into the data command center makes that something that is continuously refreshing and getting smarter over time. The other thing that we're seeing people really get excited about is if you have that full context, then you can start setting some policies around it of your own. When you see toxic combinations of exposure versus sensitive data, when you have your own compliance controls. I don't know if this works the same in other industries, but in finance, if you put your own compliance rule book together, that goes into your federal regulator and they will hold you to it. So you have to be really thoughtful about what you write in there, and then you really have to follow up on your own rules and capacity. There's also a big difference now in the regulatory environment. When I started, I'm dating myself, the regulators would release a memo very politely to tell you that this is about to happen. Now, you have to figure it out yourself. You're like, oh, Citi got censured, so I better be careful about whatever that problem was. So it's really kind of back on the organization to figure out what those compliance regulations need to be for themselves. So I a little bit covered this, but I'll just briefly talk about if you can set policies and combinations of checks, then you can do something in an automated fashion. And this is really important for a lot of organizations who, again, are gummed up on their data, managing their data estate for AI outcomes. And one of the reasons they're gummed up is they have to be able to issue findings for remediation. I just talked about that. They also have to federate it. I don't know if any of you guys work in like multi-line of business organizations, but it's difficult to get everybody talking the same language and reporting on the same schedule. This is actually amazingly tricky and a great way to get an MRIA from your regulator. Data labeling and quarantining, I'm assuming, are relatively self-explanatory to this group, but doing this in an automated fashion does kind of save a lot of headache and cycles for data engineering teams who are often sent out on kind of last-minute emergency programs to cordon off data without enough information or context on what data to cordon off or quarantine. And so lastly, as I said, if you can do all of these things, then you can create the dashboards and reports that, yes, we all want to be compliant, we all want safe data, but what is most important to me and what I've seen working with our customers is the ability to truly innovate. Once you have a trusted, sanctioned and programmatically cleaned set of data, then you can really innovate and build those AI applications that people want to build. And we see that only 10% of the funded projects are really getting off the ground. And so I hope that this was a helpful conversation on the context of how to import unstructured data into Databricks and use it across not just your Databricks data, but your whole data estate. I hope that you will come back to our booth. I would love to do a more in-depth demo for you. really going into detail about how we're helping our shared Security and Databricks customers safely pipe and sync all of their unstructured data with full graph-aware context. We're helping them build AI solutions right now that easily take advantage of unstructured data across SaaS programs, on-prem, mysterious repos you didn't know about before, the ability to pull all of those in with built-in security and visibility. These companies today are truly building AI solutions that are protected, they're personalized, and they're AI permission aware so that you're immediately innovating without exposing yourself to additional data risk. So I hope that you'll come to the booth and do a few more demos with us. I am also available for questions at the end. Thank you so much.